police vehicles lining his street overnight, firefighters and paramedics responding to a call at his house. The official cause of death, though.
It got to the point where Mathew was using every day. It was about 3 months of heavy partying.
They told us it was an accident, that Mathew Perry just slipped away, another troubled star lost to the Hollywood night. But then one of his so-called slayers broke. Not quietly, not with some tidy written confession, but in a raw, desperate sprawl of words, under glaring lights. A moment so tense, so laced with betrayal, we could almost hear the walls at the LA County lockup holding their breath. She said it wasn't fate, it wasn't bad luck, and it definitely wasn't what the medical examiner wrote on the first draft. No, she said, Mathew Perry was ordered. This was a hit, orchestrated by hands far above hers. And now, with the world's cameras waiting, she claims she's not just a footnote in a toxicology report. She's the scapegoat, the fall gal. And she's terrified because in her world, loose ends get tied up fast and nobody ever finds the knots.
Prosecutors say the woman who allegedly sold the actor Mathew Perry will plead guilty. Her name is Jasmine Sangha, known as the Queen. She could face up to 65 years behind bars in connection with Perry's overdose.
It's hard to describe the chill that ran through the interrogation room when she started talking about the network, that invisible machine that keeps the industry's biggest names perfectly in line until they become a problem. She described a system, not a one-off, a web of fixers, handlers, doctors, and so-called friends, all working for the same faceless powers who decide when a scandal is simply too much to cover up and when a life is just too messy to let continue. Her words weren't just panicked paranoia. They echoed the whispered rumors that have long haunted Hollywood's backlots and poolside lounges, that a shadowy crew exists whose job isn't just to clean up after a binge or brush aside a messy PR disaster, but to erase evidence, silence witnesses, and make even the highest profile calamities look like just another tragic accident. Mathew Perry, she insisted, never stood a chance. Not once he became a liability.
Los Angeles dealer known as the so-called Queen has pleaded guilty to charges in connection with the of actor Mathew Perry.
42-year-old Jasmine Sangha, was charged with supplying the that the Friends star back in 2023.
This wasn't some dime store screenplay. The feds actually found a string of professionals orbiting Perry's final days. A small constellation of enablers, each with their own title, their own slice of plausible deniability. But the centerpiece of it all, according to the woman we'll call the Queen, was betrayal. She says she'd played the game for years. She knew the rules, keep the celebrities supplied, keep the secrets tight, and never talk out of school. But then came the Perry job, and suddenly the rules changed. The assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, once seen as nothing but a loyal fixer, became, in her words, the pawn. She claims Iwamasa didn't just follow orders, he took the heat, cleaning up Perry's crime scene like it was a routine Monday morning chore. The ranges vanished, vials disappeared, and any line between medical necessity and outright recklessness blurred until even the authorities could barely untangle the knots. Let's be honest, Iwamasa wasn't exactly living out his dream of running a Hollywood career. He was caught, by his own admission, delivering and administering powerful substances to Perry in his final hours, acting on instructions that, according to this new bombshell testimony, came from much higher up the food chain. Did he act alone, or was he simply following orders from handlers whose names have never been published? The court transcripts tell one story, but insiders are whispering something darker, about encrypted phone calls, coded messages, and a rush to erase digital trails even before Perry's body was cold. We know the Queen reached for her encrypted app, flipping the settings to auto-delete while news reports were still breaking. We know she frantically told Fleming, her VIP middleman, to wipe their messages. If this was just another tragic accident, why did everyone suddenly act like the NSA was watching?
According to Danny Savalos, because again, I'm not a lawyer, she could face about 10 to 15 years in prison. It could be more than that. But again, all of these defendants that have taken these plea deals, it's a win for prosecutors to not have to go to trial to get them to have these, to plead guilty. But it's not going to be decades in prison. But still, any federal prison time is going to be awful.
She wasn't just supplying party favors to D-listers. She had a list of names, real, bankable A-listers, the kind whose faces could launch 1,000 brand deals. Perry, she said, wasn't just a client. He was a problem, a liability with a big mouth and too much knowledge of how the industry really worked. We're told he was buying more and more, always looking for the good stuff, chasing that chemical escape hatch after years of on-again, off-again recovery. But he'd also been talking about past connections, about other celebrities, about the kind of off-the-record deals that only get discussed after 3 a.m. in hotel bars and rehab clinics. Was it curiosity that made him dangerous, or was he threatening to blow up the whole quiet operation with a late-night phone call to his memoirist, or worse, a text to the press?
He's getting watched by 30 million people, and that's why I can't watch the show, because I was like brutally thin. And
Perry's demise, as the Queen told it, was ordered not just to silence one man, but to protect a network of high-profile careers and fortunes. And as soon as the final dose was delivered, the cleanup began. Fleming, the shadowy director turned mule, claimed he never actually dealt with Perry, just the assistant. The doctors, those so-called healers, juggled their own stories, one selling to another, both blaming each other for the tragic end. One even went so far as to call Perry a payday, a customer whose misery was just another line item on the monthly books. Meanwhile, the Queen's social media was scrubbed, old photos of her mingling with the rich and famous quietly archived, as if her entire existence was being redacted piece by piece. We watched as Perry's mother and stepfather sat in the LA courthouse, faces set in stone, as the Queen repeated the word guilty 5 times, her voice flat, her hands shaking. They'd never attended court before, but here they were, bearing witness as the last accused figure in their son's tangled end finally confessed. Reporters whispered about how it felt, about what secrets they suspected still hadn't seen daylight. Prosecutors painted the Queen as a high-class supplier, a woman who built her empire on the pain of people who should have known better. But she kept insisting that none of this was ever meant to land at her feet. She'd supplied the product, sure, but she was hardly the mastermind. It was the doctors, the assistants, the managers, the people with the real access who made it happen, she said. And when things went sideways, she was the first to be thrown under the bus.
I mean, she was the last one to hold out. She was expected to head to trial this month. But as you saw in that graphic that we just showed you all, she was the 5th.
We all know Hollywood has its fair share of urban legends, but this case was different. It wasn't just about who had the strongest lawyer or the best media spin. It was about layers, about money trails running through North Hollywood stash houses, about code names in burner phones, about the uneasy alliance of medical professionals, personal staff, and underground suppliers who all, for their own reasons, had something to gain and everything to lose. The prosecution built its story on texts, on cash deals, on coded references to Dr. Pepper and samples. But the Queen's confession pulled back the curtain even further, revealing a world where everyone was watching everyone else, and nobody was really safe. As the investigation unfolded, we saw how easy it is for truth to get buried in a town that spends millions making fiction look real. After Perry's body was found in his jacuzzi, first responders were quick to point out that there was nothing obviously sinister at the scene. But the medical examiner's report told a more complicated story. High levels of that notorious anesthetic in his system, contributing factors from prescription meds, a heart working overtime, and a life's worth of secrets bottled up in a pool of water. The Queen insisted it was all meant to look like a one-off, an unfortunate combination, but nothing more. That was the plan, until something broke and the wrong person got scared enough to talk.
He's going to be remembered as that guy that made us laugh on Friends. Friends changed his life for a decade. He was on the #1 show on television, made millions and millions of dollars.
The case didn't just stop at Perry. In a twist that would make any screenwriter jealous, the Queen admitted to another similar incident. Years earlier, another VIP client was found unresponsive hours after a delivery that came straight from her hand. No one in the business would talk about it then, but the DOJ kept the file open. And just like with Perry, the evidence went missing, the paper trail got thin, and the whispers began to swirl about who really calls the shots in Hollywood's most exclusive underworld, and what happens when even the most connected supplier outlives her usefulness. For months, everyone from former road managers to retired DEA agents insisted this was bigger than Perry. There's a cleanup crew in Hollywood, one former producer claimed, and you never see them on the payroll. Others have tried to connect dots between Perry's case and other sudden suspicious passings, names we can't say on YouTube, but you know the list. The common thread? Someone always benefits. Insurance policies get cashed, schedules get rearranged, and the gossip cycle spins for just long enough to make everyone forget.
Trying to keep it a secret from everyone.
secrets kill you. Secrets kill people like
We keep coming back to that VIP client list, the Queen's prized possession. For years, it was her insurance policy, the thing that kept her untouchable. But as soon as Perry was gone, that list became evidence. And evidence in this world gets erased. Fleming's encrypted chats, the doctor's erased records, even Ibo Masa's careful post-mortem cleaning, all point to a level of coordination that you simply don't find in garden variety celebrity mishaps. One industry veteran we spoke to, under condition of anonymity, called it the velvet guillotine. You can live like royalty as long as you follow the rules. Step out of line and you disappear without a trace. The tension in this story never lets up because even as the queen sits in her cell awaiting sentencing, she's reportedly terrified for her life. She's told other inmates she doesn't expect to make it to the holidays. She claims she's heard threats, hints that the same people who made Perry's story vanish could just as easily make her next. And who are they exactly? No names, no faces, just shadows on the courthouse walls. And the relentless hum of lawyers making deals behind closed doors.
The 5 individuals that were charged in connection to Perry's, and she was the one that was holding out, that was not accepting a plea deal, but now she has. I do want to tell you that I spoke just a few minutes ago to Mark Garagos, the attorney for Yasveen Sangha, very famous attorney in LA, who said, quote, she's taking responsibility for her actions. She has agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy to distribute distribution of resulting in.
And all the while, Perry's closest friends and co-stars offer a very different public face. Jennifer Aniston, in an unguarded moment, confessed to Vanity Fair that we'd been mourning Mathew for a long time, his struggle with dependency like a slow-motion tragedy that never seemed to resolve. She shared that he'd seemed happy, finally, on the day he passed, a detail that sits uncomfortably next to the rumors swirling about what he knew, who he'd been talking to, and why someone might have wanted him silenced for good. Was his optimism real, or just another mask in a town where nothing is what it seems? So here we are, a city still buzzing with secrets, a broken circle of suppliers and fixers each trying to save themselves, and a family left with more questions than answers. The Queen's confession, as explosive as it is, opens a door to a world most of us only glimpse through tabloid headlines. A world where the line between accident and arrangement is paper thin, and the only rule is survival. If Perry's fate was ordered as she claims, then what does that say about the rest of Hollywood's royalty? Who's really in control? And how many more secrets are waiting just out of sight for the right person to finally crack?
David Schwimmer, Lisa Kudrow, Courtney Cox, and Jennifer Aniston arriving at a church at the Forest Lawn Cemetery in
We keep circling back to the digital fingerprints left behind by the so-called Queen and her circle. Those encrypted signal messages, those frantic phone calls, the whole cyber ballet unfolding in the hours after Mathew Perry's final moments. Federal filings spell out a pattern. After news broke, she and Fleming, her trusted runner, jumped on their phones, switching to private chats and setting every message to vanish into thin air. Prosecutors point to this digital dance as a deliberate, desperate move to bury any trace of their involvement. The Queen told Fleming, delete all our messages, and that line is now etched in the case file, a time-stamped signal of panic. But here's the tabloid twist. It's what we don't see, what's been scrubbed and wiped that feels most telling. What if those vanished messages held the real blueprint, a step-by-step of the operation, names of higher-ups, a list of rules for a clean getaway? What's left now is a ghostly trail, one step ahead of the authorities, and a universe away from justice. The paranoia was palpable, even in the courtroom. One slip, one leaked text, and the Queen's entire empire risked tumbling down. It wasn't just about getting caught with vials in the kitchen or a money-counting machine in the North Hollywood stash house. The real terror was exposure. For years, these people thrived on being invisible. Their entire strategy depended on plausible deniability, a blur of nicknames, third-party deliveries, and all communication routed through encrypted apps. When the walls started closing in, they moved fast. Fleming and Iwamasa each played their parts, but everyone's eyes were on the silent men in the back of the room, the ones who never spoke but always seemed to be listening. In this world, a single mistake means exile or worse.
Because alone, you lose to the disease. And now I finally feel okay and feel like I've got some strength.
As investigators dug deeper, it became clear that Perry's last days were a whirlpool of conflicting stories and private fears. Publicly, he appeared to be on an upswing, exercising, laughing with friends, telling Jennifer Aniston he was happy. But the records show a different story. A man purchasing ever-increasing quantities, arranging for deliveries at odd hours, and, perhaps most telling, leaning on a close circle of confidants with escalating urgency. Did he sense the danger circling closer? One longtime associate claims Perry confided in him about being watched, about people keeping tabs on his movements and his conversations. He told at least one friend that everyone in this town has a price, and that some secrets are better kept with the right people. We're left to wonder, was he trying to protect himself? Or was he trying to leave a trail for someone to follow after the fact? It's hard not to feel the bitter irony at play. Perry, a man who fought for sobriety and seemed on the verge of a comeback, ended up outmaneuvered by the very system that pretended to support him. For every pep talk and staged photo, there was a shadow network ready to profit from his pain. Even his assistant, the man closest to him, turned out to be both accomplice and potential scapegoat. Prosecutors describe Iwamasa as repeatedly injecting Perry with the Queen's supply following orders he may never have fully understood. When pressed, Iwamasa claimed he was only trying to help, but the transcripts reveal a chilling obedience. Just enough agency to be useful, not enough to ever be in control. The lines of loyalty blur. The assistant was disposable. The Queen was replaceable. But the machine kept running.
And begging for because the only way I had to feel better. And
the more we probe, the more the case feels like part of a far larger story, one with roots winding back decades, a labyrinth of handlers, celebrity fixers, and medical professionals happy to bend rules for the right client and the right amount of cash. Take a closer look at those who've gone before. From Prince to Whitney, from Michael Jackson to Anna Nicole Smith, there's always a web of enablers, sometimes wearing lab coats, sometimes flashing VIP passes, and each time we're told it was accidental, a tragedy, a unique case. But the parallels are hard to ignore. An inner circle, a convenient lack of surveillance footage, a frantic cleanup, and the quiet, collective relief of everyone who stands to gain from the silence. We're not saying Hollywood invented the cover-up, but they've certainly perfected it. Federal agents tried to pierce this veil, but even they hit walls of code and silence. The Queen's cooperation was the only reason any of this leaked into public view. She cracked not out of guilt, but out of terror, fearing she'd be erased like so many others before her. Every major outlet chased the same leads, trying to reverse engineer the supply chain, but the truth is, the story's bigger than just a few guilty pleas. The Queen's VIP client list remains a closely guarded secret, but whispers say there are names still working, still starring, still shaking hands on red carpets. If Perry was silenced because he knew too much, what does that mean for those still living in the same gilded cage?
Addiction, the big terrible thing, is far too powerful for anyone to defeat alone. But together, one day at a time, we can beat it.
And so the case grinds on. Sanga's sentencing looms, and the other players are scattered, some facing time, some already cut loose on bond, all hoping the spotlight moves on. But for us, the questions keep piling up. How many encrypted chats are out there, still hidden? How many assistants, doctors, and friends are playing both sides? If a scandal can swallow a global icon like Perry, who else is at risk? And who's holding the leash? We want to know what you think. Is this just the latest Hollywood tragedy, or are we staring at the tip of a monstrous iceberg? One hiding dozens of orchestrated accidents, secret deals, and stories scrubbed before they ever see daylight. Drop your theories in the comments. Let's see who's paying attention and who's ready to look past the headlines. Until next time, stay sharp, keep asking questions, and remember, sometimes the real script is the one they never want you to read.